Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Scent of a Woman, directed by Martin Brest, Showgirls by Paul Verhoeven. We have newly released The Bad Guys by Pierre Perifel, Operation Mincemeat by John Madden, and Men, directed by Alex Garland. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Thomas, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How was your week of movies, man?
Good. Week was very good. Excited because I was able to watch a good amount of new releases, which is always nice to get that out of the way. But also really excited to talk about nearly all of these films. I mean, I think it was a little bit all over the place, but a very enjoyable week of watching for me. So.
Yeah, I'm excited for some of these movies here. And you're right, like 3 new ones, which is kind of rare, because last week we were kind of at the bottom of the barrel.
We were scraping the barrel, yeah. I had to go back and look at Netflix releases, and technically Mincemeat was last week, but I think it was good that we did the King special, and that was. Oh no,
absolutely, no.
That worked conceptually.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Okay, so we're gonna get started here. We're back in 1992. This is a pretty well-known movie. This is Scent of a Woman by Martin Brest. You know, of course, with Al Pacino. And
almost exclusively Al Pacino in this movie.
And I think even if you haven't watched the movies, if you would recognize some of the lines for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Iconic and very memorable.
Yeah,
for
definitely.
That reason. Yeah.
But what do we get here, Vin, with Scent of a Woman?
Starting off with a big one. Martin Brest, I would say, has a very odd directing career. Probably has only directed actually 5 to 6 features, and that's under his belt. When it comes to what he directs, it's Beverly Hills Cop, Midnight Run, Meet Joe Black, but also his last directing gig is Geely with J-Lo, the accursed. Yeah, and then he just stops. I mean, I had to double check to make sure he just wasn't dead afterwards.
Yeah, no, for sure.
He just didn't die from the embarrassment of that film. But yeah, very odd. This is a interesting feather in his cap, though, because while his career ends later on, towards the end of the 90s and the 2000s, early 2000s, he has a pretty good run here. I mean, even first Beverly Hills Cop. I'm not a massive fan of it, but that's pretty iconic for him.
It's a big movie. It's a big movie.
Absolutely. Scent of the Woman is about a kid named Charlie, played by 22-year-old Chris O'Donnell, Robin himself. Maybe I shouldn't call him Robin. It's Robin to me for Batman Forever.
I always kind of wondered where he came from. Because he's never a big actor. He's still not in a lot of things. Like, I don't think he has the best acting chops.
He's like in NCIS, I think, or one of those TV.
Yeah, he was a while
shows.
For that.
Yeah.
But he's pretty damn young here.
Yeah, actually 22 years old. And a lot of young actors in general on this role.
Okay.
And that really fits into the prep school environment. Charlie belongs to a prep school where many of his student comrades get him into trouble. This adds to a background conflict that is touched on in the film really just as the bookends. At the beginning of the film, we kind of deal with this prep school drama, and at the end of the film, we deal with this prep school drama. Instead, in the sizable almost 2 hours and 40-minute runtime of this film is depicted as him being essentially a babysitter for Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade, a eccentric blind man played by the colossal Al Pacino. Oh my God, this is Al Pacino's movie. I mean, he got the Oscar for it here. It is a colossal role. I really mean that. I mean, he just is steamrolling every scene. And really, when he's on screen, he just is just at a mile a minute. He just does not stop acting. You know,
in a good way.
In a good way.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
I mean, it's definitely a blown out character. It is. It could be even considered a little hammy for how much he's really creating such a unique or eccentric character behind this military vet, this blind military vet. But wow, it is something else. I mean, you're watching this about like 30 minutes in, and there's already probably a good handful of lines that you would say are probably some of the most iconic lines
that people just
Al
know.
Pacino, yeah exactly, would ever utter. So it's very interesting. The movie is very 90s with this in line. It appears like Dead Poets Society, Good Will Hunting, School Ties, which is another Chris O'Donnell movie that he does, I think either in the same year or very, very close to it. All of this has that early 90s prep school kind of, we're going to tell a moral story, there's going to be emotion to it, and there's going to be a bow on top at the end, you know. That is very seen, that is seen very clearly in the soundtrack as well. The soundtrack here is very curious, it's very playful, and once again, you hear it and immediately you're like, oh yeah, this is early 90s for sure.
It feels like 92.
Absolutely.
Does it just sound like hanging on to a little bit of the 80s in some way?
No, if anything, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I can't. I'm not a a composer or anything like that. It just feels very uplifting, if anything.
Okay,
all right. It's orchestrated, uplifting, curious, playful. And if anything, that's a good match for these type of school or academic environments. These movies are all coming of age dramas in some way. They're almost feel good emotional dramas and structures. The younger actors here are decent. They aren't given really a huge amount of screen time. A podcast fave. We have young Philip Seymour Hoffman in this, who's
great in everything.
Yeah, and even in this, I mean, I don't know how young he is. I did the math on Chris O'Donnell's age acting in this, but I can't imagine he's much older because he kind of just looks like a shrunken down version of himself, but he just has the same head. So this is very odd.
Because 92, I mean, this is before Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, absolutely. Any kind of an interaction there.
Yeah.
But quickly, the story dedicates itself to this one-on-one time between Chris O'Donnell and Al Pacino, and there's a lot there that it's what is to love about this movie. I think it is a little bit of a distraction to have this plot of the actual kids be bookended on each side. For going into this film, I thought Pacino was going to be more so in a best supporting role for this, but he is, I guess, top billed on the actor, and he got the Oscar for lead actor as well. So,
and after watching it, totally agree, right? As far as
yeah, I mean the
screen time and everything.
Yeah, the story itself is kind of more so about the kid, but screen time alone, I mean, Pacino not only is dominating the screen when he's on it. He almost not giving people a chance to act, both by his character and how he's an aggressor.
This is what you said about. I think this is what you said about Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men.
Yes,
where it was just you got to let other people in here.
Yeah, and luckily Pacino, I mean, he's almost endlessly entertaining in this, so I think it's a little bit more enjoyable to it, but. But it's he just really steamrolled is the phrase here. So Chris isn't terrible in this, being in this one-on-one kind of babysitter role to a blind man. He's very simple, but is able to crack out emotion when it's needed. My issue is more so in the emotional intelligence of the character, how he reacts, his responses. There's some heavy subject matter tackled in this. Obviously, Pacino being a blind man. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit too much to ask for a child in the 90s, but also like a character that's supposed to be a child, a 17-year-old child in the 90s, to have the same emotional intelligence as today in dealing with maybe like a depression or something like that. But it just comes off like so naive sometimes in again, if anything, it's highlighted because Pacino is acting his pants off, and then O'Donnell is just so simple, so straightforward.
Is he just lackluster, basically?
It's lackluster. I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, I think it's appropriate because
that's what the character is, right?
Yeah,
it's just a 17-year-old who's
doesn't have experiences of the world, and
like you said, it's just a babysitter for an adult male who's blind.
But it's in those emotional moments that it just comes off a little bit unbelievable that someone would respond this way, even a 17-year-old or not. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
When even the stakes are even explained in kind of black and white and plain terms to the character himself. Yeah. So, yeah, a little bit rough, but luckily the saving grace, it really is Pacino's show, and he is a powerhouse in this. Like I said, I mean, we are not even 30 minutes into this, and he is just line after, like, almost every line he says that comes out of this man's mouth is amazing. I mean, he is so ridiculous. He's so outrageous, and it's all extremely entertaining. I mean, if you are a Pacino fan, if you like his freakouts, his yelling, I mean, I think restraint is not a word that I would use to describe this film. But at the same time, it's extremely enjoyable, and I think
it works.
Yeah, it works. It works. I think I could be really critical of this type of performance, almost like how I would be critical of Leo in ways, and just say, oh, it's just yelling. But again, there's almost it's just nonstop.
Right.
It's just there's almost a dedication that comes in that every single moment with this guy, he is on blast. I mean, it's 11. Pacino is cranked up to 11.
It does sound
here.
Enjoyable.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
I think Pacino is not only the saving grace of this film, but really, I think, pulls it much higher than I normally would be with a story of this of this type, especially with the peers that I could recommend, like a Good Will Hunting, that would be a must watch in my opinion.
It really is. Yeah.
You are entranced on what kind of wild stuff is going to come out of his mouth next. A massive amount of screen time is put on this crazy horn dog blind savant of a man. It rides a little bit of a line of unbelievability. I think early on there's almost a slight game that you're wondering, is this guy actually blind, with how much he can guess and how much he's been around the block, and he can kind of guess from intuition,
right,
and things like that. There's nothing like that flirted with the actual story of if he's blind or not, so that was more so kind of my interpretation of it. But it's sometimes it just it's like he'll guess something and it's like, there is no way a blind man would understand it. I mean,
okay, all right,
I don't care if he's a 26-year military veteran, you know what I mean? Like, I guess you could argue that, like,
he's just picking up on some ridiculous stuff.
Yeah. You could argue his senses are more keen.
Right,
you know,
right.
he's more trained. But it's sometimes like, well, are you just omniscient at this point? Like, he's just all knowing Pacino. So I just think there is so much time dedicated to this on screen. It's just flat out impressive how much non-stop acting Pacino does. I mean, it really is just there's not a moment he's not we talk about sometimes, oh, this actor got a check. I mean, I think it's been a while. You got to probably go back to our episodes in November and October where I was saying, someone
I can remember, yes,
is getting a check.
I think you said that with J.K. Simmons in the Tomorrow War.
Oh yeah, he got a check there. Absolutely. Yeah. I love JK, but
I think we even said about it with Keanu in the new Matrix movie.
Yeah, that Bingo. And believe me, that's maybe a little bit of a catty kind of criticism, but this is the exact opposite of that. I mean, there's no way you can argue.
He came to work here.
Yeah. I mean, he is working his ass off on this. So it really is a well-deserved win for Pacino. And honestly, if this was just his performance alone, I have no doubt that this movie would be in the mid-80s for me as far as a score for that. But there are some issues for me. I think, one, the tone of the subject matter is a bit odd for a modern-day watch. Slade, as a character, suffers from depression with this blindness, and the immense legacy that he had before being blind, and obviously unpacking that of how that happened to his character and whatnot. That's very much a part of the story. But it goes back to what I said. While I don't expect a 17-year-old in a story that actually takes place in the 90s to have the emotional intelligence as a 17-year-old today,
right,
it still feels just very odd how he reacts to some of what Slade gives him, Charlie as a character.
Like over the top or underperforming? Like
way under. Almost like because, and if anything, again, it's highlighted because Pacino is just so on blast. It's like, wow, there's no ping pong. There's no volley back and forth.
Which we talk about a lot.
Yeah. And I got to say, the upside is that Pacino, if anything, you want Chris O'Donnell to leave the screen because Pacino can really just be in the room himself, and it's like perfectly fine. Like it's great, if anything. But there is a serious kind of dropped ball when it comes to the other side. So, and I think that plays into the characterization of of the role itself, because we're not talking about things that a 17-year-old boy could not comprehend. By 17, he has encountered sadness in some way.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
So, and that's why I say, I mean, obviously watching in a modern day, I can't maybe demand the same type of intelligence that a character would have in a story actually set in 2020.
Right, especially when especially around that subject matter where it's just so much talked about and kind of in the culture a little bit. Yeah,
exactly. But at the same time, I just feel like it's very odd, and it spotlights even further just how O'Donnell is not anywhere close to Pacino's acting. The conflict as well. The movie, it lacks some stakes. Things resolve themselves so easily, almost with a perfect bow tie on it. And I'm not even just talking about the main arc of the film. Almost every little beat of tension or stakes, it's all just resolved very, very easily. And listen, if this is supposed to be more of a feel-good environment for this kind of coming-of-age story, I think that's fine. I think it is to the detriment of the engagement we have with the plot. There's a perfect scene where Pacino is doing something a blind man very well shouldn't, and that is driving a car. And it's just so lighthearted. There's never a moment that I'm like, oh, these people are actually in danger. You know what I mean? It's just so feel good and nice. And listen, early 90s, you're going to get that. It's certainly not a main fault with the film, but I think it's what detracts it from me from being something that I say, oh, you gotta watch this. You know what I mean? Because that's not going to land with a lot of modern audiences. So.
No, absolutely. And
even my own, and it was very easy to spot for me watching in modern day as well.
Okay.
So, like I said, though, Pacino alone makes this movie a great watch and a full recommendation from me, but I cannot ignore a lot of factors that detract from this. Young adult acting, weak stakes, and ease of the resolution are all sizable knocks, enough to knock it a little bit out of what I was feeling emotionally. I walk away with like, oh, I feel one way about this film, but I have to kind of reel it back and be logical here of what I was feeling is a lot higher, but I think in an end result and in the execution, we're going to go ahead and give Scent of a Woman a 78.
Ooh, 78, okay.
But very good, a very good score. Yeah.
78 is a very good score. It's a great movie.
But I think there's enough knocks to knock it specifically below 80. And again, I can't
keep it
stress
away from that 85.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't stress again, Pacino alone. If I just went with my emotions and how much I really just loved Pacino and his character in this, it would easy 80s, easy mid 80s. But I have to be, kind of logical here, and there are some faults to it.
Well, yeah, it's what the film is as a total. Yeah.
Exactly.
But still, 78 is a very good movie. Very good score still. So
and well worth your time.
Yeah, definitely want to highlight that for sure.
Pacino alone is a well-deserved Oscar win.
Couldn't get enough of this guy.
Oh my God.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna move on here, and this is our next Paul Verhoeven movie. This is 1995, and I think it's our first NC-17 film that we ever did for sure on the ratings.
I think the first Evil Dead was NC-17.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Well, there's nothing new here then. But no, obviously, so we're been doing this Paul Verhoeven kind of study a little bit. This is the second to last one.
Second to last one. We're winding down.
And like I said, 1995. This is Showgirls, Vin. And what do we get with Showgirls?
An oddball. This is going to push me off the rails as far as what I thought this film study would be about, which would be world building and what Verhoeven does.
Yeah, you love that. That's what it started with.
Yeah, and then it's now evolved into he just likes making very adult films,
right?
and, about adult subject matter. I think it's an oddball. I didn't know a lot going into this movie, but what I found out after watching it and in kind of my post research that I do once I kind of take my notes and my initial feelings on it, that this film is almost catastrophically bad and reviewed as probably one of the worst films of the decade, if not in kind of an all-time list.
Wow.
So yeah, I didn't let that affect my ratings too much. Luckily, I was on the same page, so I didn't have to play the contrarian this time on something that is just outwardly bad.
And it's such a weird step for Verhoeven too, correct? Mm-hmm. I mean, and we just, what was the last one that we did with
Basic
him?
Instinct.
Which you quite liked. Wait.
I thought it was solid.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. I forgot about Basic Instinct because you really liked the...
Total Recall.
Yes, that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as what we have with Showgirls, I mean, this is a serious NC-17 film. Once again, this is not a family watch, much like Basic Instinct.
Yeah. Is this just like pornography at some points?
We have full-on sex scenes.
Right.
I mean, you see it all, which is, I'll get into Elizabeth Berkley in a second.
Right.
So, it's not bad, but at the same time, keep your grandparents out of the room, Yeah, this movie is oddly upbeat. Our main character kind of takes everything in stride, and really this is despite a very disgusting industry around her. This is, however, not like the execution we would see in something like Boogie Nights, though. It is missing a tragic spin to the characters. It rides the line that Boogie Nights does, in that we have a messy subject matter, but it's kind of taken on the chin, it's taken upbeat. I think what Showgirls lacks is a little bit of a twist of the knife, the tragic spin towards the end to bring it all home and say, yeah, this is actually, this is a horrible industry to be a part of and whatnot. And it's...
because you think it would be naturally... a very, very tones of extreme sadness throughout this movie.
Sure.
Just because of dealing with the content and the people that you're dealing with and the sadness that usually comes with them. But it's not really highlighting that.
No, if anything, it's like a feel-good stripper film.
Is it glorifying it? Is that the point?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not saying that's a problem. I mean, I'd say to anyone, get your bag however you get in your bag. But, it's missing that artistry that we saw in Boogie Nights.
That should just naturally be there given the story as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, even notes of speaking of again with the Paul Thomas Anderson film, the early one with John C. Reilly.
Oh yes, Heart 8.
Yeah, definitely thinks of sadness with there, just dealing with that whole Vegas vibe and everything like that.
Absolutely. Even if it maybe doesn't, you don't want it to touch our main character, it can still touch on people around it, but everyone's just like super upbeat, and it's really never really challenged in a serious way.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of a summary here. Numi is our main character. She is a girl looking to climb the ranks in the Vegas strip club scene, but the problem is she's really dumb as a sack of bricks. It's real bad. She is street smart in ways. There's sprinkling of street smart there, but it's really almost shocking how stupid the character is written in any dramatic make sense. I mean, this is
kind of annoying, really.
Really bad,
Yeah.
outwardly bad. Elizabeth Berkley is the actress playing Numi, and it's a real coin toss here. 50% is this horrific acting. And it really is horrific, just like how bad dramatic scenes are.
And Elizabeth Berkley, she's also known for Saved by the Bell.
Which I never watched Saved by the Bell.
I'm trying to figure out because if people saw her, they would know who she is.
I think
but
so.
she's not that big of an actress and hasn't been for quite some time.
And if anything, Showgirls is the more notable things that she's done.
Yes, and could potentially also be the catalyst of her career that started to shrink and shrink.
Yeah, that's.
But regardless, she's fresh off of Saved by the Bell, essentially. So back then, she's kind of she's a hot actress.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, this coin toss. I mean, it's 50% this like god awful acting, but to some praise. And this is where I'm so thankful I did not taint myself with understanding that people call this like the worst movie of the 90s or anything like that. I think 50% is a positive physical performance of the actual stripping.
Oh, having to be a stripper,
yeah. Folks at home, I mean, however you take your coffee, Elizabeth is not only stunning, but delivers a demanding role. If anything, because it's NC-17, we really see it all. Mm-hmm. And that means a lot of screen time where she is just straight up breaking a sweat from dancing and stripping. Right. You know what I mean? It is a physical performance.
She came to work too, just like Al Pacino.
Came to work just like Al Pacino. No Oscar here for Elizabeth though. And they couldn't see it. I mean, really, there's again, it really is. However your preference is, folks at home, you have to look at this and say, I mean, there's a laughable quality to the dramatic elements, but because this film is NC-17, there is so much time put into just dancing sequences. And I can't say that it was, I mean, it was maybe a little silly, it was maybe a little dated, but it is not a easy role, and the physical demand that Elizabeth Berkley is putting in there is something of note. It's with much disappointment that I call her acting, her actual dramatic acting, catastrophically bad. It's like I said, it is a real coin toss that you can look at it and say, well, there is merit here, but man, it's just like real, there's no follow through.
Yeah, it's just like she makes a better stripper than an actor in this.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes she appears to be playing the character. Other times, I don't know quite what she's doing.
It's all over the place, huh?
It's like, what? Well, we'll talk about satire and camp and intentionally bad acting a lot with our final entry in Starship Troopers. And even if I want to be super generous and say Elizabeth is playing some layered idiot method acting, and it's intentionally blown up to play a very naive girl trying to break into a stripper scene. I mean, even still, there is nothing there to support it, and there's nothing else in the very poorly acted supporting roles to follow through on that idea, where we will see, and I hope to say, with Starship Troopers, there's intentionally bad acting, but it's all in service of a satire to it,
gotcha.
if that makes sense.
No, for sure. And you made a comment there about other actors as well in this film. Is just everyone bad? Kyle MacLachlan?
Yeah, that's of course Twin Peaks guy. He is, I mean, it's more so the dramatic elements are just so cartoonish in this. They're really, like, he plays this like Ferrari, pimp almost, producer, MBA,
Okay.
Corporate douchebag type of character.
Yeah, sure.
And when it comes to his portrayal of that, I mean, I even like him as an actor just because of like Twin Peaks and whatnot, but it just comes off terrible. It's just
really
all.
It doesn't sound like they're
service.
given very much. I mean, if this movie is that bad, which is what you're leading to, it's failing on a decent amount of levels. Then it has to be from writing and directing, honestly.
Yeah, it's a shame. Maybe the shoulder or who's to shoulder the blame is writing a little bit more, but man, it's just. It's just not good in execution. So maybe it is on Verhoeven's shoulders as a director, in the final thing. Man, just very conflicted on this one though. There are sprinklings of good all throughout it. I think it's a fairly well shot film. There is a Ferrari scene that is pretty awesome, just how it's shot on the Vegas Strip. It's also chock full of choreography as well, as our characters climb out of seedy strip clubs into full-on Vegas shows. You can maybe look at this choreography and say, yeah, it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit of a joke on how showmanship or how showy it is. But again, you know, the thought behind the choreography and then also the execution of the dancers and the actors and the actresses in these shows, there's merit there. I mean, these are long takes that there are no cuts and they are working their butts off, you know. So there's the physical performance aspect is something of note.
That's good. I mean, those are good that there's little silver linings in there.
Yeah.
The cinematographer, same guy that did Total Recall and RoboCop and Starship Trooper as well.
So yeah, he must be tied at the
hopefully,
hip.
Oh, for sure.
With Verhoeven.
Which hopefully that's a good sign for the film to come.
Absolutely. But I would say, unfortunately, the acting and the story is just real bad. Misunderstands the critique that something like this could go for, and just kind of becomes more of a kind of a stripper empowerment story, but with none of the perspective needed to kind of tell the dangers of that or anything like that. And sadly, I think it sinks the whole ship.
Yeah, and why would it just kind of seems like it's an obvious thing to touch on in the film.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just that's how you would build drama in it. Instead,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, instead drama is built in other ways through catty relationships between strippers and whatnot. It just feels very basic.
So how was it with the fact that it's 2 hours and 8 minutes? So you get like no drama, you get no like dark areas. I mean, was it dragging on?
Really, the drama is more so around the troubles and tribulations she has in trying to climb the ranks of being from a very seedy, off the Vegas Strip stripper to a full-on Vegas show.
Right.
How do you climb to that? How do you get over the stereotypes of just like, oh yeah, you're just kind of a backroom girl or something like that. There is drama there, but again, it's meant to over.
It's right. Yeah. It's nothing about the industry that could be so wearing on girls and everything.
There's no emotional depth.
And that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. We're at 2 hours and 8 minutes. Did you find yourself being like? I mean, there's not else much there.
Yeah.
Were you checking your watch?
No, because I mean, it is a nudie film. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, I think this is definitely full on NC-17 for a reason. I think there is a slight credit I can give to, again, physical performance and that it shows it all, know. But yeah, it's not any kind of emotional depth. When we started this with the whole Verhoeven kick, this movie was obviously the outlier in the stretch of movies that I outlined.
For sure.
I didn't really do too much research into it, and like I said in the beginning, I did not expect this to be reviewed as like as bad as reviews as this is. I don't really follow like the Razzies or anything like that. If folks at home, if you're not familiar, the Razzies are I don't know if you could even call them fake awards, but they're awards.
They're the anti-Oscars.
Exactly.
People
they're
who
the worst
did
of the worst.
Yeah.
And this film has really gotten, the kind of the nod of, if you will, worst of the decade. I think there are a lot of things intentional in this film, and I think maybe this could have been Verhoeven's first crack at trying to build in satire and intentional camp to it. But very simply, it does not clear the jump, and the execution is not there. We are going to go ahead and give Showgirls a 26.
Ooh, 26%.
Yeah.
Bad movie.
A bad
Just
movie.
a bad movie.
Bad movie.
Yeah, Paul Verhoeven isn't doing the best job so
He's
far.
not. And
is it surprising to you? Look, I'm not surprised that this was a bad movie, but
it is surprising because I'm already going to have to argue for the positive reception of Starship Troopers because it's a satire. I mean, on the surface, it could look like very much a bad movie.
No, yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I think it's.
You were not hyped on RoboCop.
No.
And for such a classic, and for such a kind of it's such a sci-fi type thing. I don't know. It's just
I think if anything, I'm happy to explore things like that because I can know what directors look electric from their work, and I can be excited about diving into that, and that's really what this 5-movie stretch was. At the same time, though, I'm not trying to expect only good. If anything, I like that I'm discovering that people can have stumbles and still be pretty prolific as far as what they produce.
Oh yeah, 100%. But okay, well, as far as Showgirls is, that is a 26%. So not much worth it for y'all out there.
No.
But hey, that's okay. So like we said, we have one more on the Verhoeven list. That'll be probably next week.
Yeah.
And which will be Starship Troopers. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on. Like we said, we have 3 new movies here today. But first, we just want to go ahead into our producer segment, and we want to thank those of you who helped produce this podcast. Now, this week, Vin, we have 2 producers.
Oh, wow.
And both coming in with the Godfather donations.
Look at that.
$95. We have a couple Godfathers now.
We covered Pacino. I didn't even know.
Oh, that's perfect, actually. That actually turned out wonderfully.
Awesome.
But yeah, so anyway, so our first donation comes from Anonymous, actually. And the note that they wrote in was very enjoyable and entertaining listening.
Okay.
Reviews are smart and witty with interesting movie facts. Vincent and Tom have a great chemistry. Keep up the great work. Love it.
Well, thank you, Anonymous.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Anonymous. We appreciate that. We appreciate, we do work well together, Vin. We do have great chemistry. She's right. Or he's right. Who knows?
Oh, sure.
But no, so Anonymous, thank you very much. You are an executive producer of the Daily Ratings podcast, and also, which I can't even bring it up fast enough here. So like I said, we have a second donation of a Godfather, which is $95, and the reason why is it's our highest rated film at 95% on the Daily Ratings. And this is from Anne Agnant. Again, Godfather, $95. And my computer's frozen, which is fun.
which is a fun upside.
But no, Anne says, entertaining, in-depth, and enlightening reviews of an eclectic array of movies, encompassing all genres. Nice job opening my mind to to venture to see. Okay, let me start this over. Nice job opening my mind to venture to see a movie that would not usually be on my radar or watch list. Very good. Vincent and Tom have dynamic and fun personalities and are enjoyable to listen to. Tune in soon. It won't be your last time.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Look at that. And definitely the whole point. I mean, if this is opening it's popping a new movie on your radar, opening your mind a little bit. Absolutely.
That's cool. And we love when people, hey, if you want to just stop by and listen to the movies you care about and use the time codes and everything that we have set up, that's great. But also, if you listen a little bit longer and listen to these episodes through, I think that's exactly... You're going to experience what Anne has experienced.
Absolutely, because that's what this whole thing is about. It's about saving you some time.
Yeah.
And if there's something that's maybe not on your radar, but I'm saying it's worth your time, guess what? Give it a watch.
Yeah, especially just hearing 10 minutes on it. It just spikes your interest a little bit, and it's good. And I think a lot of people who maybe don't even care that much about movies are also getting something out of this, where it's kind of fun and you're getting into it a little bit. And when you watch now, and I think there's some people at home that when they watch, they're like, oh, wow, the soundtrack does suck. Or starting to kind of review it critically themselves, which is great. It's getting into film and kind of diving in a little bit deeper.
Absolutely.
So, Anne, thank you so much for your Godfather donation. You were a Godfather yourself. And it's so nice to have 2 producers this week, both at $95. We can't thank you enough. That's a huge amount. And if everyone just gave a little bit, that would be unbelievable. So, if you're wondering what the hell this is or what's going on, this is the producer segment, obviously. This is where we thank the producers, but it's to remind all you that we go off the value for value model here. And basically what that is, you can go to thedailyratings.com. You go to the top right to the donation tab, and using any amount of value that you think you're getting from us, from the podcast, from the website, put a $sign amount to it. And what are you getting from this? We want to stay away from corporate advertisers, so we're not going to throw ads in your face on the podcast multiple times. We're not going to break for that. We really want to stay away from ads on the website. It's going to bog it down. It's a worse experience for you all. And it's just not really worth it in the end. We think podcast advertising, this is kind of... It's kind of going in the tubes a little bit, and you can actually see it happening a little bit with some major players in the game. But for this is kind of our own family. It's our Daily Ratings family. We want to stay away from Patreon, where if you give this much, we give you a little bit extra. If you give this much, then we really give you a little bit even more extra. Obviously this content is free. We're putting it out there. But the fact is we can't do this forever because it takes a while. But we think it's getting better. We have fun things on the horizon. all of you producers who helped to make this happen. Being a producer is real. You're a legitimate producer, and to Anonymous today, to Ann today, they are executive producers of the Daily Ratings. It's important. It means something. And with that, you can write it a note, and we're going to read it here on air, whatever you write, or ask questions to us. And that's kind of what this segment is about. It's to thank you, producers, and to remind everybody we are going solely off the value for value model, and whatever value you can give to us is huge, and we thank you so much. Now, with that, we're going to continue on here. We have 3 new releases.
Meaty.
And we're going to start with, it is. So we're going to start with the animation that came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, earlier in the month, I would say.
This is The Bad Guys, directed by Pierre Perifel, which I'm not aware of him.
No, yeah, I think he's pretty new, and you'll see that more commonly in the animation space as well. So
It's true, yeah.
It's been a minute, though, since I've watched anything DreamWorks. We've covered a lot of different animation studios recently on the podcast, but probably the last thing I watched from DreamWorks was probably the first Boss Baby, which I thought it was a good movie, and I will
You're a big fan of Boss Baby.
I will probably die on that hill alone.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. I think there's some critical reception out there that really hates on Boss Baby, but I mean,
I thought a lot of people liked it.
Yeah. I thought it was a great movie about imagination and whatnot, but we'll leave that if we Boss Baby 3, we'll do the deep dive on the series. The bad guys are a crew of legendary evil creatures in a world of humans who are scared to death of them. This includes, of course, characters like the Big Bad Wolf, played by Sam Rockwell. We have a tarantula, an anaconda, a shark. So they are the creatures that humans are scared of, and they are the bad guys, all in a crew. In addition to a lot of great voice acting talent for the other creatures in the crew, Sam Rockwell is our lead as the head honcho of this crew. I would say, as far as this being a heist movie, it's cool because we're seeing the bad guys be portrayed as the best heist crew around, and when some unexpected kindness hits the crew, it kind of gives them something that they could never steal, and that's really a second chance, which I think is the heart of the movie. Second chances for everyone, which for a kids movie, I think that's a perfectly fine nugget on the inside. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good one because all these kids movies have an overarching theme, and then even smaller ones attached to that. But I think that's a fair one. I think that's a good one to make a film out of.
Absolutely, and a lot more overarching. We touched on Turning Red not too long ago on the podcast, and I think the critique on both of our sides, Tom, was that it was such a hyper specific type of movie around a mother's relationship with a prepubescent daughter. This is just so much more of an open thing, open palette for many children audiences.
Yeah, it's speaking to a broader audience, which is I think so important for these animation films because you also want to be good on the adult side as well. And you're right, Turning Red was just narrow.
Yeah, good in what it went for, but narrow, absolutely. And I think children's films have to be a little bit more broad for what they cover and whatnot for the many different type of audiences.
And maybe they don't have to, but it always tends to be the best animation films out there are those.
That balance it, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The ones that are the most successful demonstrate that as a quality.
Yeah, exactly.
So, of course, animation-wise, I am a huge geek for this stuff. I really like the mix of 2D and 3D animation in this. 3D is the base of the characters, and then 2D effects are layered over this. A defining quality of this is that the 2D animation has drawn-on eyes on our CGI character bodies. Drawn-on eyes, sometimes drawn on mouths, and then very dark outlines in kind of a fake pencil, if you will, to the characters' models.
And I haven't seen it, but looking at the stills and everything like that, did it come off as cheap, like TV quality?
No,
it was good.
Very good. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If anything, I think it's a cheap animation trick, and maybe that gives you some of that feeling, Tom. That it's like it could be seen as maybe cutting corners, but stylistically, I think it is a very good match.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's nice.
I didn't put this as a note, but you kind of bring it up. I think we're really in a. I mean, I don't want to be bombastic, but a kind of a golden age of, we could have so many CGI movies all look all the same, you
Yes.
know, carbon copy. But the fact that we're getting all these CGI movies and 2D animation, the tools of the past are being used to create unique looks across many different films, I think that's awesome.
I think it's extremely important, and it seems like every single Pixar kind of has their style. Not that they don't change it up; they definitely change it up and everything. But you do have DreamWorks. Sony is getting into the game now. Which one did you? Gosh, what was the last?
Mitchell's vs. the Machines.
Yes, you love that one. Klaus that we did. You love Klaus.
Absolutely.
And it is nice to see all these different forms of animation because it keeps it fresh. Sometimes they take on the feeling of what the film is about as well. You know, you need a specific animation for the specific type of film is very cool.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
Absolutely. And maybe a golden age is a little bit, you know,
no, I don't think
too
so.
much high praise. But think about it. How many movies that could be coming out and they could all look the same, you know, carbon copy?
Golden age is exactly right because the animation films that are coming out are largely very, very good. And we finally have a lot of studios in the mixes now.
Yeah, a lot of studios, a lot of unique looks to films. You know, I think that's important.
Exactly right.
And for something that, you know, is always forgotten, that the you know, army of artists behind this, and you know, how many artists have their own preferences and want to bring their own style to it. The fact that we're getting that style on display in many different qualities across many different studios, I think that's a really good mark, and this film is absolutely in that mark. You know, this 2D effects that are given to it, it gives a sharp look to it. It gives it almost an anime quality once again to it. So this movie also got some real laughs out of me, which I walk into these things, I don't really expect that. You know, that's fine. But there's almost a never-ending joke of them all being animals in the crew in a real world. The Mr. Shark, the character played by Craig Robinson, is supposed to be the master of disguise as well. So the fact that he's able to just like dress up and infiltrate something, but he's like clearly an animal among humans, it's really is. It's a never-ending joke. It's a bottomless pit of laughs. It is really good.
That's cool. That's nice when you, as an adult, can sit there and laugh.
Absolutely,
and enjoy it. I love that.
The absurdism.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah. So, and Craig Robinson also another highlight. You know, while talking about some voice acting talent, really good. I would say I would say surprisingly, Rockwell actually a little bit on the meh side. You know,
was he just? And I'm assuming he plays the wolf.
Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of sounded, I mean,
bland?
If I didn't know it was Rockwell, kind of sounded like a discount, why can't I think of it? Wedding Crashers, not Vince Vaughn.
Owen Wilson?
Yeah, Owen Wilson. Sounded like it was, maybe it was the character that he was, you know, maybe he was challenged to be good, and, you know, I don't know, but...
it wasn't really hitting with you, though.
Yeah, it wasn't as cool as Rockwell could be, and if anything, this was the moment. Yeah, he's playing the, you know...
That's funny, we were just talking him up so much last week.
For real. Yeah.
For the Green Mile.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of good voice acting talent. Aquafina as well. She plays the Tarantula. Usually not a huge fan of her, but she was really good in this as well.
What else is she in? I just forgot her name was Aquafina. Yeah. I thought that was friggin' hilarious.
Yeah. Aquafina is in... Well, she's in a few comedy series. She was in Shang-Chi, the new Marvel film.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
And you're not digging it.
Well, I'm just... I'm sure she did a good job.
Yeah.
and then
listen, I'm sure we're probably going to get plenty of new actors and actresses with one name and whatnot. I mean, it's what marketing is going to have to do.
No, it's fine. Know? Yeah, it's a funny name. That's fine. I was looking, putting some movies on the site, some of the older ones. Mm-hmm. There was a guy in westerns. He was in westerns or anything like that. His name was Slim Pickens.
Slim Pickens. Whoa, that's amazing.
But anyway, all right. So back to the bad guys here. Yeah. And Mark Maron was really second in was with Sam Rockwell's for the top two.
As he is key to. He plays like a hamster that is like perfectly good.
Mark Maron, the snake.
Oh, the snake.
Yes,
yes. I'm sorry. I mixed that up. Yes, he plays our anaconda. Okay. I thought it was good. Definitely not the highlight of the initial crew.
Okay.
I think a downside in this is we don't get to see enough heist action. Luckily, even during the redemption plot, the crew skills are reworked into similar type of scenarios, but it never quite reaches the heights of when we just get the simple premise of cops versus robbers. The cops are great to. They are always animated as kind of just a single blob of cops that kind of appear on the screen. It's very good. Just some awesome work on the concept of that and the feel of cops and robbers, the electric energy of that. Like I said, it's creative how it's reworked in the plot to fit into this redemption story. They still utilize their skill set in ways, but that initial sequence is dynamite.
Okay, cool.
Really comes out hot out of the gate. So,
by the way, does it take place in a fictional city, or does it?
I don't know. It has to be a fictional city.
Okay, so it wasn't.
I don't know. I don't.
Well, not like in Atlanta or anything.
No. But again, there's just like this, this evergreen joke of just like they are animals in this human world. Like, how is this acceptable?
Right.
Sentient animals. An awesome score. Really can hang with the best of high-paced jazz soundtracks. Very much reminded me of Cowboy Bebop. Very much reminded me of Lupin the Third from anime size. We got sharp horns. It is timed with sharp cuts in the edits. Just really good stuff. Definitely a high mark from me. Those sharp edits definitely are playing into the awesome action sequences. Driving is a huge focus in this film and a very good looking quality.
Oh, they do it cool, huh?
Yeah. The car that the crew has, I believe, is... I don't know if it's like rendered at a higher quality or they put like once again, more 2D effects over it and it kind of stands out in a unique way, but cool looking speed on screen, and that's almost always the case if you have a really good animation team behind it. But really good stuff. Fight scenes as well has some really jaw-dropping visuals. Actually, one fight scene in particular, I would say, has jaw-dropping visuals and reminded me of the highlight in Boss Baby, which was hyper-stylized imagination sequences. That we are just in a moment kind of dip our toe into the very, very far reaches of what animation can be pushed into for this. Then, so
that's interesting.
Yeah,
is it like trippy?
Not trippy, but but animation, it can't be constrained by camera angles. It can literally do anything you want.
Right.
So this one action sequence about halfway through in the film just really captures that. We get just such unconventional ways that the camera, the simulated camera, if you will, is moving around and the frame is moving around. So just good stuff that I like to see.
Okay.
If we're watching a movie that's animated and it's just doing kind of shot reverse shot that a normal film would do, I don't find that to be a good quality or something worth of praise.
I think for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Once again, that plays into the fact that this film has a unique identity in a landscape of an endless sea of animated children's films and is crafting its own identity, and that's a big mark for me. So I don't have too much to say and too much more to criticize. I thought this was a very cute movie with a cool factor for kind of older audiences to enjoy it. For my animation geeks out there, I would say this is a great watch and something that we see another animated feature with enough style of its own to craft this unique identity and definitely worth carving out a spot among the many children's films you could probably watch. We're going to go ahead and give The Bad Guys a 75.
75, a great score.
Absolutely. Could have used more Pacino.
No, but 75. And
that's the criticism for every movie. Could have used a dash more Pacino.
No, but that's a very good score, especially for a kid's film, and definitely one I'm assuming you can just go and have a good time with your kids, and you're really going to quite enjoy yourself.
Absolutely.
Yourself. Very cool. All right, Vin, we're going to keep it going here with the 2022s. So next on the list is Operation Mincemeat. This was the Netflix film.
Bingo.
Okay, so Operation Mincemeat, directed by John Madden. What do we get with here? I was kind of unfamiliar with this.
And we'll definitely take a slow down now because we go from talking about Pacino and then talking about a very bad movie, then talking about a children's movie. Now we're talking about a nonfiction war movie. Okay. So we're really at some different pacings. So I'll kind of slow down for a moment. This movie primarily tells the nonfiction story of the British subterfuge to trick Nazi Germany into believing in a fake Mediterranean invasion, specifically the invasion of Sicily. That is Operation Mincemeat. I think it was called something different on the American side because that was all airborne stuff, but I won't get into history with that. That's way too much. But it is also based on the book of the same name by Ben McClintyre, I think it's his name is pronounced.
Okay, all right.
But a nonfiction story, and I say primarily nonfiction because it is obviously dealing with the very real spy or rather early espionage operations of Britain. We have very much chock full of historical figures, and really the only thing that kind of drifts apart is more so kind of a romance drama that I would argue as well drags the movie down quite a bit.
That's what I just rolled my eyes.
Yes,
it's just
you
like
did.
it just doesn't seem necessary.
A hearty roll.
It doesn't seem necessary.
Yeah,
I mean, when you're talking about war, it's dramatic enough. You don't need a romance drama taking away from the main story.
Yeah, I know. And in ways, maybe this is, this kind of hits on a Casablanca, or at least it wants to be kind of a Casablanca that we have. The romance is in the foreground, the war is in the background, but I don't know. It's not the best. We follow Ewan, played by Colin Firth, and then Charles, played by Matthew McFadden. Mm-hmm. Two British intelligence operatives that are tossed aside to craft a plan to secure the safety of the invasion of Sicily. This has the two of them creating what will be the bedrock of espionage, believability of the ruse, and how to trick your enemy with the obvious. And this is where the movie is really at its best. It feels a lot like Darkest Hour, where exposition and action are told on the home front of Britain, behind bunker doors and behind bunker walls. This has a much faster paced feel to it, though. Almost is a heist movie in itself. It has some very snappy editing to it.
Okay.
Music put over it that it's time appropriate, but almost kind of feels like an Ocean's movie, if you will, of how the music is overlaid into quick cuts of what we're doing here, what we're doing there, and how this moves the plot along.
I could like that, especially with dealing, because it's not just a straight up World War II movie. It's something very specific.
Absolutely,
like you said. I could see how that actually would be good.
Yeah.
But in most war films, I don't think I would like that, actually.
Yeah. Because I think this movie gets away with it because we're not seeing real casualties of war and the uglier sides of the invasion.
Yeah, there's something about doing those quick cuts with and like throwing the music and everything like that where it just drops down in seriousness.
Yep.
And was that the same thing, but it could get away with that because, like you said, we're not directly in conflict in war.
Yeah, I think it was enjoyable because there was I appreciate the snappiness of us just getting to what this was actually about.
But it's not like it made it fun.
No.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it didn't make it fun, and more importantly, I think your criticism is valid though, because I mean what we're talking about is very serious, or can be very serious.
Yeah, I like films typically that are snappy or quick, and like you get cool camera sequences often if things are moving quick or with the music in there. It can be good, almost like an Ocean's, like you said.
Yeah,
but just I'm thinking about it in a war setting, and I just think it's a tricky thing to balance.
Yeah,
but I think maybe you can get away with it just because we're dealing with something specific about a war.
Yeah, and I think maybe the film feels it has to do that, much like the romance triangle drama type of thing.
Okay,
it kind of maybe feels it needs to do that because obviously this is just one piece in a successful historical invasion, you know what I mean? So we already know, well, maybe you don't already know, but we already know in a grandiose way that the Nazis lost. So,
right.
you know what I mean? So maybe it feels it needs to kind of create small beats of that and in the writing. But the early spy work is a big focus here on the operation. I think it's absolutely the best part about this. We also get a minor character role from Ian Fleming, the writer of the James Bond books.
Really?
Yeah.
We see his character a little bit.
His character kind of in and out of
that's cool.
spy operation meetings, and we always see him writing on typewriters and whatnot. And again, I can't fact check too much of just which meetings he was actually in or what he was privy to.
Right, of course.
But yeah,
that's cool.
There's really cool nods to in this maybe more minor type of operation. of trying to trick and create this espionage. I think it's cool that they put that in there. And again, those are the more enjoyable historical beats to this. I think this movie does kind of check a box for history buffs in that type of way.
Yeah,
and Fleming's
I like the
inclusion
sound of that.
is a good piece.
That's a nice little nugget, for sure.
Exactly. The real shame, though, is that a good half of the plot, if not more, is focused around this love triangle drama that is far less interesting than the World War II spy work. Kelly MacDonald plays a secretary that gets wrapped up in the spy plot, but really only serves to be romantic tension when the film gets boring. And I'm gotta tell you, this really dragged it down for me. I even enjoy Kelly. I love her in No Country for Old Men. She plays
Josh Brolin's wife.
Yeah. Our only sane character in that movie. Kind of dealing with horrific things. So when it comes to that, I mean, I was really kind of rooting for her performance as well, because I really wasn't a fan of Colin Firth, and I didn't really even know walking into this Matthew McFadden. So it's unfortunate that it really detracts what is easily the movie's strength, and it just feels like fluff. It feels like they're prying it open.
Well, to hear that it's half the film sucks. Yeah. Even if it's an hour, it's way too much. Way too much. And then I do like... I like the cast in this. Like, Colin Firth looks good. Like, it looks the part.
Absolutely.
Matthew McFadden, I just know him from Succession. I think that's where a lot of people are going to know him from.
Okay.
But were they good? And just the story that they had to be involved in were not the best?
McFadden was enjoyable as a character, but...
Colin Firth didn't have...
Yeah, without going into spoilers, what I would say is that what this love triangle does is it takes our very competent spy operations and wanting to see our two main characters establish these new spy tactics in war, and it makes them incompetent because they're just kind of boyishly fighting over a girl then, and they're getting dragged up in this. And I think it does much more than just saying, I don't really care for romance dramas or anything like that, or love triangles. It does much more to damage their characters and their competency and how much I enjoyed them on screen.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
And if anything, especially because it's so enjoyable, having them think creatively around, okay, how do we create a believability in this plot where the Nazis are going to be looking at this with scrutiny? I mean, Nazi spy operations between, the Enigma code and whatnot, all that stuff. That is really, they are the trendsetters in that time. So they have to get over on them. Well, guess what? Our characters are fully capable of that, but they're constantly being detracted from that because they're getting involved with this girl. Yeah, so it's not the best. So it really is the only source of direct conflict our characters face for the first half. And yes, like I said before, this is wartime. This is background pressure of the film is there, but it is largely about the drama between team members, and it feels manipulative to create this drama that ultimately goes nowhere, only to give us spice before the real stakes of the operation take place when they are green light, and it's a go. Thankfully, I would say as a light silver lining, kind of bookends on this film, there is a snappy spy intrigue that does come into full swing for the last 40 minutes. It is there, finally.
Okay.
We do get there. It is the saving grace of the film, and like I said, almost has a heist-like energy to it. I think it's effective as there's just so much that is unknown, much like a good heist movie or story has to be crafted. There has to be proper communication of the plan to the audience, but then there has to be unknown elements to possibly derail the plan. Mm-hmm. I think it's phenomenal because the Axis is very unknown to the British at the time, their operations, and what they could be seeing this spy effort as. So I think as a result, it's good in the beginning. There's a big meaty middle there, and good at the end. I wasn't too hot on this film, but I feel Like the reason why I'm not too hot is I feel just there's a lot that comes before it. Oddly, we don't have scores for these on the site or the master list, but I think Darkest Hour, Imitation Game, they are much better versions of this if you are looking for this kind of British operations. And then, of course, if you want actual boots on the ground, Dunkirk is the one to go.
Okay.
So, that said, a fine movie. Maybe with a healthy amount of points for World War II history buffs in us all. We're going to go ahead and give Operation Mincemeat a 61.
61, okay. Yeah, it's still a good movie.
And definitely kind of on par for like a, pretty good Netflix release, you know? I feel like Netflix releases like that are always going to be like, all right, it was all right, you know?
Yes and no. It just sucks that drop the, again, just like the love story, they probably put it in there because they felt like they had to. Everybody thinks that that's what needs to be in a film when so often it's the thing dragging the film down.
Yeah.
If they could have stuck, let's say you'd scrap that for the most part. And then stuck with so much more of the espionage in the beginning that you loved.
Yeah.
And then you have, the great espionage and then an actual great conclusion to the film. Then you have something good.
Yeah.
You think back to Netflix, one of their first main releases when they really got into film was
Beast of No Nation.
Beast of No Nations. That was a solid movie.
Oh, phenomenal. Yeah.
And that film didn't mess around.
Yeah.
And I feel like lately these Netflix movies are just messing around a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And trying to stick to a formula instead of trying to be fresh and new and interesting.
And granted, it was a book, so, you know what I mean? There's always...
That's true. Very true.
Yeah, but
when making a film...
Exactly.
Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to pick and choose.
Kind of understand the strengths, understand in the edit, if you will, what is actually working about this experience.
Now, that being said, 61, still a good movie.
Absolutely.
Like you said, World War II buffs, I mean, they're going to like it more and might definitely just watch it to watch it.
Even in how I described it, there was nuggets, like the Ian Fleming bit, I mean, there's nuggets there that there is enjoyment, so.
Very good. Okay, so 61 for Operation Mincemeat. Now, we're going to go ahead and continue on. This is our last film this week here, Vin. This is Men, directed by Alex Garland, and it is a horror film here.
A full-on horror.
Yeah, coming out in just the summer. It's a summer horror film, basically.
Yeah.
But what do we have with this here?
Interesting. I think there's a lot of confusion around what this movie is. I'm a big fan of Alex Garland as a director. Ex Machina was his first work, which I thought was a very solid movie, and Annihilation, his second, which I loved. Annihilation is really I wouldn't say a guilty pleasure watch, but if I ever need sci-fi just to kind of check that box for me, Annihilation lately has been...
It's a safe thing to put on?
Yeah. I just enjoy the
I've
design
been wanting to watch that, and I just haven't been pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
And I see your score on it, and it's like, okay, so this is actually a good movie. Because I don't believe it's going to be a good movie. When I watched the trailer,
right.
I'm not the biggest fan of her and everything,
sure.
so...
Portman, you mean?
Yeah. But continually, it just seems like, I guess I should watch that.
Yeah, I think it's just both are just very solid sci-fis, and while his movies have dealt with horrific qualities within that science fiction before, we are now this time around full on horror.
Okay,
there is not any kind of sci-fi to this, and I think that kind of has added to some of the confusion. I'll even say with myself, I thought this was going to be still sci-fi horror in some ways.
Okay,
and it is not. So. I think that's important for kind of the review and the watching guide of this, definitely, to eliminate some of the confusion in walking into a film for recommendations out there. I think even early reviews were calling this somewhat sci-fi as well.
It's pegged to sci-fi in most sites and everything,
which is like not the case. Sorry, and believe me, I wanted it to be. So.
Right.
The story is around a girl named Harper, played by Jessie Buckley. I don't have any experience with her, but she was good in this. She is a victim of emotional abuse in a relationship with grim consequences. The movie flashes in and out of these events and gives us something to puzzle together in the slow burn aspects of this film. This is also a 24 film, I believe. So, viewer beware. If you don't like the slowness of the films, guess what? This isn't going to be...
Expect that vibe.
Yes, exactly. But I think to that credit, a lot of the downtime time we are spent puzzling together what exactly happened in this relationship, which is good. That's good layered writing to it. So
Okay.
the present is played out with Harper escaping to a country retreat to kind of decompress from these events, and suddenly there is a face that keeps on reoccurring. This movie is very similar to Split in that we get to see Rory Kinnear. That is how you pronounce it, right? Kinnear?
I always thought it was Kinnear.
Kinnear?
But
yeah.
I've not actually really. I don't know if I really heard it pronounced all that much.
Who I have been a
we love Rory Kinnear.
a longtime fan of OG first 3 episodes of Black Mirror.
Yep.
And then of
Plays
course
Tanner in the Bond movies. Is that what you're gonna say?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure it got in there.
Yeah. But I actually do like him in the Bond movies. Like,
I think
he's a bit more than just a bit role, you know.
Yes, he's a perfect character for what his character is.
Absolutely.
He's a perfect guy for that.
Absolutely. So, in this capacity, we see him get to act in many character roles, and I really mean character roles. These are very blown out. They are he kind of represents every Cockney country person that you could find in Hot Fuzz all in one character. You know? So it's very country British, and he you can see that he's having a ball with just playing different stereotypes, if you will, of the country side, and the different type of personalities you get with that. And also, I mean, much like Split, where you have this single actor balancing multiple character driven roles, really enjoyable too. I mean, I think he was a serious highlight here. I wouldn't call him scary per se, but he's definitely menacing. And then there's also just an enjoyment of watching him on screen playing these
different characters.
roles. Yeah, it's very enjoyable.
It's the Cloud Atlas effect.
Sure. We got many syndromes on the podcast.
But as long as it's good, as long as you have that character playing the other characters well, that's what really makes it enjoyable.
Yeah,
it's one thing to slap on different costumes and it can be done really bad. But given the right talent and given the right act, I mean, that's good.
Exactly. And I honestly, I don't know how much of a role he had in crafting these different personalities, but it is very enjoyable in the execution and definitely keyed in the mystery. I really don't want to talk too much more about the story because I think that in itself
really need to bleed coy on this one.
Yeah, exactly. I will say we'll put a pin in it, but I don't think that's even maybe something that after you watch the film, let's say if we even were to talk about spoilers, there are clear-cut answers for, because this is a very vague, intentionally vague film.
Okay.
And hey, that's in my opinion how horror should be, but we'll talk a little bit about what's been the audience reception in just a moment.
Oh, okay.
So there is a cool aspect ratio to the film. Medium-sized letterboxing on the side, black bars on the side, left and right only, nothing on the top.
It's like old school, or was it wider than the Lighthouse?
It's not.
So it's not 3x4. Or whatever.
It's not. Lighthouse is aspect. There's letterboxing all around the frame, where this was just on the left hand side.
Oh, okay, all right, gotcha.
The left and right. The sides are just basically pretty medium sized black bars, if you will.
Real technical speech. Here.
Medium sized black bars. This is, but you bring up a good point. This is utilized like the Lighthouse.
Yeah.
It's
and a lot of A24.
Absolutely.
Too, yeah.
Absolutely. It is not, Lighthouse still has the crown for the implementation just because it's black and white, but this does absolutely check the box of why I am fascinating with this simple camera trick. It's when we get those shots with pure darkness, the edges of the frame, it's just the edges of that darkness feel infinite. And there is one sequence very early on in this film that she enters a tunnel scene. You might have seen it in the trailer. That it's kind of a voice callback kind of thing, or an echo in the tunnel. And the tunnel is just so pitch black dark that the screen really does transform.
It just bleeds into those black bars.
Yeah, it's just infinite. It feels so
very
great.
Cool.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was the original intention or if it just works out that well.
I think there's a lot of copycats, honestly, of what Eggers did with Lighthouse. And again, no one can do it as good as Lighthouse because Lighthouse has the fall through of being black and white.
Yeah.
With that same concept.
Yeah.
But I definitely like it. It's always something enjoyable, especially in a horror sense. It gives an unease to it.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to be too, romantic or flowery in my words of it, but it really does feel like kind of an infinite blackness of the edges of the screen.
Cool.
So I think with horror, that's the type of, wording or imagery you want to feel with, especially a slow burn horror, Down to some of the critiques of this film is that there is a really unfortunate amount of FaceTime sequences with her friend on the phone, with Harper's friend on the phone, actual FaceTime, holding up the phone and whatnot. To my disappointment, this is not used creatively within the horror. And it is not implemented in a original way. It is just really her staring at the phone, reverse shot into the friend. And I don't know, maybe FaceTime is going to challenge what I always like to see with texting in film.
Yeah,
it's incorporated into one shot.
How could we see different iterations of it?
Yeah.
Make it more interesting. Did you at least get something out of it?
No.
In those scenes, like speaking to her friend, was there information things coming through? Or
No. That's really where it's a serious knock for me because it feels. I don't know if this was in the original draft of this or anything like that. I mean, I can't blame anything like that, but it really feels lazy.
And it's more than one. It's not just like it was 30 seconds.
At least five sequences
really?
that she's calling her friend because she's going nuts. It's a horror film, and she has
for sure
her friend to lean on, but it's it's not even used in a way like Get Out where there are heavy sequences where we're checking in with the friend, but there is something done with that that the friend is discovering more about the plot and we're keying in as the audience. There's nothing done there. It's just kind of a little bit of a break time from the horror because we're not really getting scares while she's on the phone.
Yeah.
So disappointing because lazy is not really what I want to critique a director that I enjoy so much. I really love both of his films leading up to this, but I gotta say, I mean, this is just a very cliche horror, predictable kind of best friend element shoved into the movie. Again, if it was the FaceTime was implemented in a creative way, if it added to the horror, if it added to the suspense,
complete reversal.
Yeah,
it goes from not liking all the way to, oh, this is something interesting.
Exactly.
And cool. Yeah.
Exactly. Even if it had to be this show the actress, then show the screen, the screen of the phone.
Yeah.
If it really has to resort to that, use it as a tool in the plot. I would say largely it is not at all a tool for us to build horror suspension. If anything, it's our time as the audience that we can rest and say, okay, it's not so crazy anymore. It's not so horrific.
Right.
So,
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I mean, just man, believe me, with how much of a knock predictable aspects of the film are, luckily the horror is there to bring up the scares, and there are some things in this film that are like shockingly horrific. I'm talking, we're working with cosmic horror. We're working with something that is truly weird, like capital W weird.
Okay.
And if you enjoy the later half of what Annihilation is, I think you still very well might enjoy this film because it still hit for me despite these very generic aspects, and I mean almost critically generic aspects of this, of how the story is layered.
Yeah, what's weird is like it sounds like you're getting very, very good, relatively good movie, and then just periods of not like cut that out completely, and we have a good film here.
Cut out the friend character entirely. And yeah, it's tough because I was really rooting for this film, but when I went back and was reviewing my notes and whatnot, I said, no, I would rip any movie apart for this. I cannot.
Oh yeah,
I cannot have horse blinders on for that, just because of how much I like the flavor of the horror. So, and honestly, as far as that very weird cosmic unknown horror, I think Honestly, that is what you want in these movies. That's how I want my movies. I don't think you are getting into an average horror with this one, despite that knock that I just talked about. But I think when you're watching this film, you're going to be looking for answers. And there really are no answers. This movie does not have training wheels when we're dealing with the actual horror. There is not a lot explained. It is about Harper and her healing from this kind of emotional trauma. But as far as why these horrific things are happening, there is no really? Explanation. It is all visual storytelling, and I give points for that. So horror is about lack of information. It is about the unknown.
So is it the more you pay attention, the more you get, or just straight up, this is not giving you much?
Yeah, no, I believe me, I was paying attention. Okay. I was really excited for this film too, because again, I really do love this director.
You were. We talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
concerned about that. I was concerned it was going to be some woke thing. I was called Men, of course. It's just this woman going on to all the men in this town.
Right.
Is that upsetting in a way because you're paying attention to this? It's got good horror beats, but then when nothing is answered, you made the comment of I like my horrors being like that, having questions unanswered. Was it too many?
It was specifically with how this movie ends. It does end so abruptly that I felt. I mean, there was an air in the theater that no one moved for the entire credit sequence. Everyone was just silent. Waiting. Yeah, is there
probably when
more?
The Sopranos ended?
Yeah. Yes,
it was a little bit of that, just what the hell?
Wait, really? Yeah.
So be prepared, really.
Yes, and in that, it kind of goes back to the piece that I was talking about that we put a pin in. Audience reception of this has been all over the map.
Okay, gotcha.
Really all over the map. And as a reviewer, and as we've talked about on the podcast before, that's the times I really get excited to talk about a movie, because if I can help you folks at home navigate this a little bit through what I'm describing, and maybe even go deeper beyond just a surface level score, I think that is what I like to do. That is a good utility to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, lean in more so to my description of these factors, because I definitely don't want to talk about what could mean something, what could be a theme with this, because honestly, I don't think anyone knows the answers, and I think it's intentionally like that.
That's not the bad thing, is 10 people see it, 10 people, those 10 people walk away with each having a different idea of what's really going on. In its own sense, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've heard people describe this as kind of along your lines, Tom, that, this is just a kind of a misogyny hit piece. No.
That's how I took it immediately from the trailer.
Sure.
Just because in theaters it was playing a decent amount before it came out, and then just the title alone, I was just like, here we go. Here we go.
Right.
Now you can usually parse through that relatively well.
Sure.
So can you see why people are picking that up, or are you just after watching it? I mean,
I think it's definitely a theme in the film, but by no means is
it wouldn't ruin it for me, who's a little bit more sensitive to that stuff.
No.
Okay, right.
I don't think so. But also at the same time, this is not your movie, Tom. No. This is not your movie for 10 ways to Sunday. So
okay.
And folks at home, maybe can understand the nuances of what I'm talking about here. If my positive marks sound good to you, then maybe that's where we're aligned. If not, no problem.
Right.
I think this is a difficult movie to talk about, and one that honestly I'm still digesting in a lot of ways. What I want to stress, though, is that anyone that is calling heads or tails on this movie means this or the horror means this, I'm telling you, I was watching with very keen eyes and very keen ears, and this is intentionally, there's a lot of misdirection within the film.
Okay.
Specifically as well. So I think this is more so. The recommendation for this is that this is certainly not for everyone. Unfortunately, there's some generic aspects to the horror that knock it below what I believe Alex Garland's work has been so far, but still captures a very unique horror experience and something that is quite shocking as well when you see it on screen.
Okay.
So we are going to go ahead and give Men a 69.
All right, 69, good score.
Yeah. I think it's a good movie overall, but where both Ex Machina and Annihilation high performing, if not on the verge of great, this was definitely
a notch down for Garland.
Decent on the verge of solid.
Okay. So. And honestly, it's nice to have different take on horror as well.
Yeah.
And if you're redoing things a little bit, what did we have a couple weeks ago that you liked? I forget what it was. And it had Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, it was Sam Raimi.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just nice to, at least there's people doing things differently.
Sure.
So as you said, if people are into that kind of thing and what you're talking about, they would enjoy that, then I think absolutely a film for them.
Absolutely.
And I think it's 69, don't forget, that's a good score for us.
Yeah. And if there was going to be a subgenre to a cosmic horror, that is defined by no answers, and this film has no answers to give.
Okay. Be warned.
Yeah, be warned. Exactly. I enjoyed it, but I'm not one that needs closure. If anything, a critique of what Scent of a Woman at the beginning of the podcast was too much of a nice bow on it. This is no bow, no present.
Awesome, Vin. Okay, Vin. So, anything you'd like to add to this, or are we gonna roll credits here?
No, I think we're good. I really enjoyed this week. I mean,
I love the array
all over the map.
It was all over the map, different array of scores as well.
Even watching Mincemeat, it was like, should I just wait until next week for Top Gun? We'll do like a war theme. But at the same time, I like doing the theme weeks. At the same time, I do also enjoy just like this is what I watch throughout the week, and I'm here to talk about
Absolutely.
it. You know what I mean?
No, I love it. So. And it's all over the place, and that in and of itself is great a little bit. So, all right, Vin, we appreciate you stopping by as always, and folks at home, we're going to run this through one more time here. We have Scent of a Woman with a 78%, Showgirls with a 26, The Bad Guys with a 75, Operation Mincemeat with a 61, and Men with a 69%. We thank you so much for listening, and to our 2 executive producers this week. And folks, we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the Donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. You'll get a producer mention on the next podcast episode, too. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.